Hello and welcome to the February 8th, 2019 edition of the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns Short News. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody that tonight's Friday, so tonight, 8:30, we'll have a live stream tonight, and every Friday night at 8:30, as well as Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'd really like everybody to drop by, especially all the new subscribers. We're well past the 2,000 subscriber mark, which is fantastic. And if you like what you hear today, please give a like and subscribe down below. We would really appreciate that over here at Gold, Goats, and Guns. Now, what I want to talk about today is being anti-war, but I'm going to do so in the context of the following. Today is my 51st birthday, so 51 trips around the sun. Who says I don't get out anymore, right? Okay, so why it's important? It's kind of as we go forward here and we do this conversation, and I realize that every day the world seems to get worse before it gets better. The older I get, right, the more I really feel like, you want to feel like the world is getting worse. And we live in very chaotic and ugly times, and it's hard to parse what people are actually saying. Here we have these great technologies where I can sit here and I can talk to you honestly about what's in my head, what's coming out of my mouth. But at the same time, this is also a very kind of fake interaction because it's not a real conversation. So I can't direct the flow of conversation back and forth. So when I read comments that I'm starting to get on some of my YouTubes, they're kind of disturbing because I realize that there's so much to talk about that I forget, because I'm kind of like Patton. I don't like to pay for the same real estate twice. I already made that point yesterday. I'm moving on to the next thing. And forget where my positions come from. So when I say, well, I'm a libertarian, for a lot of people that doesn't mean anything. A lot of people who are radicalized now in these very politicized times, a libertarian just means a right-wing corporatist. And sadly, a lot of libertarians or people who self-identify as libertarians are right-wing corporatists. I'm not of that variety at all. I have a lot of sympathy for what passes for criticism of our country and our society that comes from the left. Where I fundamentally disagree with them is on solutions. But I want to talk about being anti-war in a world where our government and our power structure that exists to support that government behind the scenes is fully committed to a warlike stance against the entire world for their benefit as opposed to ours. And they sell it to us as America First, MAGA, hope and change, mission accomplished, all of these things. But this is nothing new. It's been going on for as long as there have been people in charge. Now, here in America, the idea of the ideal America, that's the benighted, chosen country, people to lead the world out of the darkness of World War II, is part of our mythology here, and it's certainly part of our mindset. So I'm going to read you a comment from my last YouTube video, which didn't get under my skin this morning because it just reminded me that when people come into the middle of the conversation, they don't really know who you're talking to. So this comes from Matt Erbst from this morning. He says, Tom, when you speak out against war, I like you. We desperately need to end the American empire before we have wasted the final years of America. Hey, so far, so good, right? You sound like a silly right-wing nut most of the time. You profoundly misunderstand socialism and how unpopular centrists are. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that final sentence, and that's what I really want to talk about today. So let's start at the beginning. Anti-war is a mindset. Right? Being anti-war in general is a mindset. I'm not just talking about imperial wars of conquest or colonization overseas. Anti-war is a mindset. You don't have the right to go to war with somebody else unless they've stolen from you. And then even then, you don't really have the right to go to war with them. All you have the right to do is to demand redress of grievance, the return of your property, and under libertarian justice theory, the replacement of the same thing. So we don't believe in an eye for an eye. We believe in an eye for two eyes, and a little bit of scaring, because of course being thieved caused some amount of psychological distress. All of this flows from the non-aggression principle, of which I do my very best to live up to as an adherent of. It would be the closest thing that I have to a religion. So I'm not just like flippantly anti-war because I see the bad parts of the American empire. No. I fundamentally don't believe I have any kind of right to use aggressive force to achieve my goals. And once you take the non-aggression principle deeply into your heart, you realize, and you start looking around you, you start realizing the layers of aggression that exist around you all day long. It's why we libertarians, for the most part, are anti-government, because we realize that government is nothing but force. And so to Matt's point about me profoundly misunderstanding socialism, that's not the case. I have studied everything there is to study about socialism. I've at one point could even have been considered a leftist in my ideology, not completely. But I don't believe that you ever have the right to aggressively coerce somebody to do what you want them to do. And if you become a member of the Libertarian Party, political organization, you have to take the pledge of the pledge that you do not believe in using aggressive force to achieve social, political, or individual goals. Period. End stop. Ultimately, socialism is centralized control of the means of production. It's what it is. What stems from that is the inability of a rational pricing system to coordinate the structure of production amongst all of our needs and wants. The central planners don't have enough information to rationally run the economy. Ludwig von Mises tore down socialism 100 years ago in his great treatise, Socialism, in 1921, and I urge everybody to read it. But the idea that I don't feel the same, the embedded in Matt's comment is the idea that I don't feel the same outrage over the unfairness of corporations, the unfairness of the justice system and all these other things that come with it. No, I do. I feel so strongly about it, as a matter of fact, that I want it all torn down. I don't want more government. Government is the problem, not the solution. Because government uses force, and by doing so disrespects the needs of the individuals and the rights of the individuals. Because you can't have a society and a community if everybody's sticking their hands in each other's pockets and saying, no, that part of that's mine. What you have is part of that's mine. No, that's what socialists and what leftists in general misunderstand, is that the idea that, well, I didn't build that, my business or my life or whatever, that it was built in coordination with all other people. That's true. No man is an island. But what they fail to understand is that the transaction that took place, which allowed me to buy the things that I own from the people that I've traded some of my time for other things, that comes from other people. That comes from I had to trade my time. They had to trade their time. We made a mutually exclusive, mutually beneficial arrangement, transaction. And there's only a very small difference called the profit to each of us, which, by the way, is subjective, because we both feel like we've profited. And then really it just comes down to our comparative advantage and be able to create X over an X number of units of wealth per unit time in this endeavor as opposed to that endeavor. It's really not very difficult. Anybody who's studied 5 minutes worth of economics understands the concept of comparative advantage. But you cannot to say that I didn't build it. Yeah, I did, and you built yours, and we traded, and the difference in the difference is only really what we perceive to be the profit in each transaction, because the cost of goods sold, or whatever you want to call it, is very high. And so I couldn't do the things that I would do without the other people, and that's already built into all the transactions that we partake of. It doesn't matter if we use barter or we use money or we use credit or whatever we use to adjudicate our preferences, because that's what prices are. It's our preference. I'm only willing to pay X for a particular thing as opposed to X plus 5 monetary units. So that's all it really is. And then once you understand that, then you're not scared of voluntary transaction. You don't need the state to regulate people's horrible impulses. The state winds up aggregating people's horrible impulses because it creates a vector by which they can use aggressive force, because that's what the state is, with impunity. And if that makes me a right-wing lunatic, well, then I'm guilty. Sorry. It just seems silly to me. It seems axiomatic that we wouldn't want to hand flawed and fallen people, all of whom are capable of terrible, terrible things, including myself, give them the ability to point guns at each other and steal from each other and get away with it. The more that we allow that to be the dominant thought, the dominant intellectual and moral paradigm of the day, what a shock that we wind up with more and more corruption, more and more things that make us crazy. And war is just simply the ultimate expression of that, where governments fight amongst themselves for control over resources that they throw pittances back to the people for to keep them happy. And politics is simply the art of selling you on the just cause of that war and that thievery. Now, I understand that it's incredibly frustrating to live in a world of endless aggression. I feel it every day. It drives me crazy. And I know that Matt Erbst is feeling the exact same things that I'm feeling. I get it. I do. I get it. I get it to the core of my being. That's why I'm a libertarian and not a socialist. Because you've never heard of any freaking libertarian going out and wanting to, go take over the freaking world. Well, I mean, they may self-identify that way, and their names would be like, Charles Koch. But socialists, no, they become ideologues. They become aggressive. It's part of the process. So if it makes me a right-wing nut to say that, well, that's fine. If that's what you want to believe. But I think that really what you really should be thinking about is to check your own premises about what it is that you believe. Because I've been doing that consistently for the last 25 years. Every day. Am I right about this? Is this right? This seems weird. That's an odd conclusion that you came to about some issue, and then you sit down and think it through. And the truth of the matter is that it's a principled position. It's a principled position. It doesn't make it a practically implementable position today. And that's what this channel is about. This channel is about bridging the gap between what is philosophically and morally correct and what is practically achievable in a reasonable amount over a particular amount of time with the people who we have available to us to implement those said solutions. But always and forever with the idea, the controlling idea, it should never give power and pelf to anyone. What are you, crazy? They're just going to use it against you. All right, this has been the Gold, Goats, and Guns short news for February 8th, 2019. I hope you liked what you heard today. If you did, please give a like and subscribe down below. You can follow my work over tomluongo.me. You can also follow my work over strategicculture.com as well. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728, and you can support my work over at Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns. You guys have a great afternoon. Hopefully we'll see you this evening. And if not, have a great weekend. Keep your stick on the ice.